help you learn this week's dance. Our first move is we're going to move our hands up and down every time the song says raise your hands. Next, we're going to feel the beat. We're going to grab our electric guitar and we're going to feel the beat. Lastly, we're going to scream and shout. And there you go. Let's get started.
Sometimes there are days when nothing goes your way. Just remember that the rainbow comes after rain. Keep your head held high and know that in this life you will love, so come on. Raise your hands high, jump up, it's time to get loud. Nod your head, feel the beat, let's scream and let's shout. Get up, twist down, we're gonna shake the ground tonight. Raise your hands high, jump up, it's time to get loud. Nod your head, feel the beat, let's scream and let's shout. Get up, twist down, we're gonna shake the ground tonight. Sometimes it feels as though it's such a heavy load, but just remember that you never walk this road alone. I'll be there for you, I'm gonna see you through. Take my hand and let's go. Raise your hands high, jump up, it's time to get loud. Nod your head, feel the beat, let's scream and let's shout. Get up, twist down, we're gonna shake the ground tonight. Raise your hands high, jump up, it's time to get loud. Nod your head, feel the beat, let's scream and let's shout. Get up, twist down, we're gonna shake the ground tonight. You put your right hand in, put your right hand out, put your right hand in, and shake it all about. Come on, sing along with me. Put your left hand in, put your left hand out, put your left hand in, and shake it all about. Come on, sing along with me. Raise your hands high, jump up, it's time to get loud. Nod your head, feel the beat, let's scream and let's shout. Get up, twist down, we're gonna shake the ground tonight. Raise your hands high, jump up, it's time to get loud. Nod your head, feel the beat, let's scream and let's shout. Get up, twist down, we're gonna shake the ground tonight.
Hey Riverside Kids, welcome to this week's lesson.
Last week we learned how King David met a beautiful woman named Bathsheba. He really wanted her to be his wife.
But there was a big problem. Bathsheba was already married.
David had made a plan to get rid of her husband without thinking about what God would think. He called Bathsheba's husband to go to a war far away.
He sent him to deliver mail to the most dangerous spot in the battle. King David knew that this was a dangerous mission. He hoped that her husband would not come back home so that he could marry Bathsheba.
King David got exactly what he thought he wanted. He married his beautiful bride Bathsheba and they lived happily ever after. Wrong.
This was terrible. King David was not thinking clearly.
God had to send his prophet Nathan to speak to King David.
But instead of calling out King David's mistakes, Nathan told him a story that was similar to King David's.
Nathan told David that something terrible happened in the kingdom.
He said that there was a rich man who had many sheep, came to town and saw a poor man that only had one small little lamb.
The poor man cared for the lamb sweetly because it was all he had.
The rich man wanted the poor man's lamb, and he stole it for himself. The rich man was so spoiled, he felt like he deserved anything that he wanted.
King David was furious. He wanted the rich man sent to jail and killed for what he did to the poor man.
King David also felt bad for the poor man because David himself used to be a shepherd boy.
King David was about to send soldiers to arrest the rich man from the story.
But the prophet Nathan told him that the rich man in the story was King David.
King David immediately realized that he was the rich man that took the poor man's sheep by taking another man's wife.
King David cried and cried, and he finally saw that he had done wrong and knew that God was upset with him.
King David asked God to forgive him for what he had done. He promised God he would never forget him in another decision again.
Wow, even a chosen king by God can make big mistakes. Even after making these terrible mistakes, God forgave him and called King David a man after God's own heart.
King David's story has been full of adventure that had its ups and downs, but God was with him every step of the way.
Join us next week as we learn all about King David's son, Solomon, and his story, Even the Wise Fall.
Keep watching for this week's craft.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye!